Hi everyone, so today we're going to be doing notes on converting back and forth between standard and vertex form. And the first one we're going to look at is when we are given an equation in vertex form, converting it to standard form. So the first thing we're going to do is a quick little review on multiplying. So multiply the following: x plus 3 squared. A reminder, this is not equivalent to just distributing that squared and making it x squared plus 3 squared. That is not what we do. Saying x plus 3 in parentheses that this thing is squared is equivalent to saying x plus 3 times x plus 3. And then from there we FOIL it. So let's review from last time. First, outer, inner, last, which is just a fancy way of saying we're distributing. Or it's just the fun little acronym for distributing. So first, x times x is x squared. Outer, x times 3 is 3x. Inner, 3 times x is 3x. And last, 3 times 3 is 9. And then I have a couple of like terms that I can combine. So my answer is x squared plus 6x plus 9. Also, random exciting news, my finger now, I can make it all the way straight, which is super exciting, so I can use it a little bit more now, but that's still as far as I can bend it. But I can finally make it straight. So I'm very excited. And sorry my nail polish looks awful, and one hand has no polish on it at all, because I can't grip anything with my left hand to actually take it off. And I only mention that because I know if I was a student watching these notes, I would notice that. But I'm sure some of you didn't. Anyways, now that you've seen this example that we did together, I want you to go ahead and pause this and try the 2x minus 5 squared on your own. And when you're ready to check, push play. Go ahead and check your answer to this. Now from here on out, I'm not going to show, I'll point with the pencil, I'm not going to show this step on a lot of the problems. So from here on out, I'm going to go from this where I show that I FOIL to what I wrote in yellow. If you feel comfortable writing this middle step though, you can continue writing that. From here on out though, I'm going to go from this step where I show the little foil rainbow things to what I highlighted in yellow. All right, let's go ahead and look at some examples. So now that we've done the little review on what to do with this stuff in parentheses, I can actually apply it to having more stuff going on in the problem. So we're going to convert these from vertex to standard form. So what I'm going to do first is FOIL the 3x plus 1 squared. So this negative sign is just going to stay hanging out in front. So let's see. Yeah, I'll show writing out them being multiplied. So 3x plus 1 times 3x plus 1, and then the minus 4 at the end. So now I'm going to FOIL this. So y equals, the negative is going to stay out in front, and then I'm just going to put this whole thing in parentheses. So 3x times 3x is 9x squared. Outer is 3x, inner is 3x. 3x plus 3x is 6x. Again, if you want to show that middle step, you can. And then the last gives us plus 1. And then I still have that minus 4 hanging out on the end. So what I'm going to do now is distribute the negative. So distribute the negative, and that's going to go to all 3 terms that are in the parentheses after it. So I'm going to end up with y equals negative 9x squared plus 6x minus 1. And then I still have that minus 4 hanging out at the end. And now we just simplify. So my answer is y equals negative 9x squared minus 6x minus 5. And there we go. Now, some of you may be wondering, could I have just distributed this negative 1/2 into here first before foiling it? The answer is no. If you remember PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, or order of operations, parentheses comes first, so anything inside the parentheses we can simplify, which there's not. But then exponents is next. So you have to deal with this exponent first before you can address the multiplication. So that's why we can't just distribute the thing that's multiplied out in front into the parentheses, because order of operations, deal with the exponent first. So let's go ahead and do this example together, and then I'm going to give you a few examples to try on your own if you would like. So I'm going to write the steps one more time. So FOIL the 2x plus 4 quantity squared. So I'm going to have y equals, this 1/2 stays out in front, and then 2x plus 4, 2x plus 4, and then the minus 3 stays hanging out at the end. Now I'm going to FOIL this, so first, outer, inner, last. Again, if you want to write this middle step, you can. I'm going to go down one more line, just to give me more room. So I'm going to have the 1/2 that stays out in front. 2x times 2x is 4x squared. 2x times 4 is 8x. Inner is also 8x, which gives me 16x. And then the last gives me plus 16. Close the parentheses. And then we have this minus 3 at the end. Now we need to distribute the 1/2. So again, following order of operations, this multiplication has to come before the subtracting 3 at the end. So then I end up with y equals 1/2 of 4 is 2, so 2x squared. 1/2 of 16 is 8, so 8x. And 1/2 of 16 again is 8. And then we have the minus 3 at the end. So just clean it up from my final answer. And 8 minus 3 is 5. And there you go. Here's 2 more examples for you to try on your own. So go ahead and pause this video, and then when you're ready to check, push play. All right, go ahead and check your answers for these 2. So again, I didn't show this step going from foiling it to the middle step. I just went straight to this thing in parentheses being simplified. But if you want to show that middle step, you totally can. All right, let's go ahead and look now at converting standard form to vertex form. So this one's going to be a little bit more complicated and more steps. So I'm going to zoom this out a little bit. Go ahead and take a minute, pause this video, write it all down, and then I will go through and explain it. Okay, so going from standard form to vertex form. First thing you're going to do, so remember standard form, actually I'll write these over here on the side for those of us who need a refresher. So standard is the ax squared plus bx plus c. Vertex is the a times x minus h quantity squared plus k. So we are converting from standard, this thing, to make it look like this, vertex form with the parentheses, the squared, all that stuff going on. So step 1 for doing this is to move your c to the other side of the equal sign. So you're just going to subtract c or add it if it's already negative. But you're going to move c to the other side of the equal sign so that just your ax squared plus bx is on one side by itself, and then your c is on the other side by itself. Then once you've done that, you are going to take your b value, so whatever that b value is, the coefficient in front of x, you're going to divide it by 2 and then square it. And then once you have that number, you're going to add it to both sides. So you're going to take b divided by 2, square that number, and then add that to both sides of your equation. Remember, because you need to keep it balanced. So if you add something to one side of the equation, you have to add it to the other side. Once you've added it to both sides, you're going to factor the right side and then move everything over to one side. Now, I know this looks a little complicated and a lot right up front, but it'll make a little bit more sense once we look at an actual example. So let's go ahead and do that. So we want to convert the following from standard to vertex form. So I'm going to write out all the steps that we're doing with this as we go through it. So first things first, I am going to move the c value. So step 1, move c. So in this case, we're going to be subtracting 16 from both sides. So we will end up with negative 16 equals x squared minus 6x. Now step 2, I'm going to leave a little bit more space doing this example just so it's really easy to see what I'm doing. Step 2, divide b by 2 and square it. Add to both sides. All right, so my b value is negative 6. So I'm going to have negative 6 divided by 2 squared. But I can simplify that. So negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. So negative 3 squared, which is 9. So I'm going to be adding 9 to both sides. So I'm going to have negative 16 plus, I like to put a placeholder, equals x squared minus 6x plus, and a placeholder, so that I make sure I am actually adding it to both sides. So I'm going to write the positive 9 in both spots. Will this value ever be negative? Good, you should have said no. It will never be negative because you're squaring it. And anything squared is always going to be a positive number. All right, so now that we have this, it is officially now added to both sides. Oops. So what I'm going to do now is factor the right side. And move everything to one side. So what we're factoring is this. So this brings us back to last time when we did notes on factoring. So my big X, what goes in the top? Good, you should have said 9. What goes in the bottom? Should have said negative 6. So two things that multiply to get 9 and add to get negative 6 are negative 3, negative 3. So this is going to give us x minus 3 times x minus 3, which we can just write as x minus 3 quantity squared, because there's 2 of them. That's how this gets turned into vertex form. So negative 16 plus 9 is negative 7 equals x minus 3 quantity squared. And then the last step is to put everything on one side together. So I'm going to just add 7 to both sides. And I get y equals x minus 3 quantity squared plus 7. Oops. So we took it from standard form and rewrote it in vertex form. Let's look at another example now. So instead of writing out all the words this time, I'm still going to number it 1, 2, 3. So you can follow along with these 1, 2, 3 steps up here. I'm just not going to write out all the words again. All right. So step 1 is to move the c value. So step 1, I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. So I will get negative 1 equals x squared plus 4x. Then step 2 is to take my b value and divide it by 2 and square it. So 4 is my b value. So 4 divided by 2 squared, which is equal to 2 squared, which is 4. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides. I'm going to have negative 1 plus, leave a blank space, a placeholder, equals x squared plus 4x plus, leave a spot for a placeholder. And I'm going to put 4 in both of those blank spots. Then I need to factor this. Keep this consistent and do it again in green. So my big X, 4 goes on the top, 4 also goes on the bottom. So my factors are 2 and 2. Did anybody notice with the last example, or with this example, this number that ends up being here, this 2 and this 2, is also your b divided by 2 value. So when you write it out, when I write this out in the factored form, I'm going to have 3 equals x plus 2 quantity squared. Subtract 3 from both sides, and I get y equals x plus 2 squared minus 3. That plus 2 was the factors there, and also my b divided by 2 term. So if you remember this nifty little trick, draw a big, long, awkward arrow over to that. Your b divided by 2 term is what goes there in your answer. Now, if you don't remember that trick, totally fine. You can still factor it using the big X and you'll get the same thing. It's just a really cool trick to use when you remember it. I'm going to do one more example with you, and then I'll give you a few to try on your own. So step 1, move the c value. So we'll subtract 17 from both sides. Zoom in on that a little bit. There we go. Step 2 is to do the b divided by 2 value. So negative 8 divided by 2 squared, which is negative 4 squared, equals 16. So that's what I'm going to end up adding to both sides. So I will have negative 17 plus, leave a placeholder, equals x squared minus 8x plus, leave a placeholder. And that's where the 16 gets filled in. Then you can either factor this using the big X, which I will show for this example. So the big X, 16 goes in the top, negative 8 goes in the bottom. My numbers are negative 4 and negative 4. And then step 3 is to write it in factored form. So negative 17 plus 16 is negative 1 equals, this side becomes x minus 4 quantity squared. And then we add the 1 to both sides. So y equals x minus 4 quantity squared plus 1. But again, these factors, the -4 and -4, is what ends up going there, but it's also your b divided by 2 value. So again, if you remember that trick, you can skip this whole part in green, factoring it. Last two examples I want you to try on your own, so go ahead and push pause, and then when you're ready to check, push play. Go ahead and check your answers for the last two problems. So again, I just showed the little 1, 2, 3 in pink to show the steps that I was doing. And for this, I just used the shortcut to go from your b over 2 value to writing your factor. If you chose to still do the part that I did in green where you show the factoring with the big X, totally fine. Do whatever you're more comfortable with. So that is the end of our notes. I know that this was a lot of content to take in. I think going from standard to Vertex is definitely more challenging. This is more challenging. It's called completing the square. So when you're doing your homework, I highly recommend have your notes out next to you and be following along with the steps, step by step, for at least the first few problems. And as you do more practice, you'll start to get the hang of it and remember the steps of what to do. All right, that's the end. Have a good rest of your day.